Going on social media is a lot like going to Target or Costco. Like, you go for one thing, but then you see all this other shit that you didn't even know was gonna be there, and then suddenly you've spent $200. Your mind and body are begging you to delete social media, and here's why. My camera is frustrating me so much lately. Like, can we focus? Okay, perfect. Hi everybody. Sorry, it's raining so loud and there's cars going by, but hopefully you can hear me and all is well. I have my coffee and I have my Snoopy notebook with all of my ideas inside. Let's settle in and talk about why you should delete social media, and hopefully these are reasons that you haven't heard before, because we all know social media is a net negative. And I'm also going to talk about my relationship with it. So right now I have deleted all social media. So I try to delete social media at least a few times a year, and I mean fully, like, deactivate the accounts. And on Instagram you can deactivate your account so it won't show up for anybody until you reactivate it, which is different from deleting it. But I highly recommend you do this at some point, just so that you can see how much better life is when you don't have social media in your pocket and access to like every human in the world and what they're doing and what they're thinking, and how it's so much better than what you're doing and thinking. Let's just get into it. I think one of the most important things about deleting social media is it teaches you the importance of boredom. Now, we all hate boredom. No one likes being bored. However, now when you're bored, you can be like, oh, I'll go on Instagram. Oh, I'll go check in with what this creator is making. I'll do this, that, or the other thing on my phone. But when we do that, when we have this thing that can fill any sense of void that we have in really any area of our life, it keeps us from experiencing the importance of boredom. Because when you're bored and you don't have access to your phone, you have to figure out something that you want to do. It forces you to be creative. It forces you to do things that you like to do, and it forces you to make a choice of what to do. When we go on social media, we are essentially giving away our agency and our sense of choice, because yes, we're choosing to go on social media, even though that choice is definitely influenced by how addictive social media is. But once you go on there, you don't have that much control over what you see. Like, yes, you can seek out certain information, but then you're gonna get all this stuff in your recommended, or you're gonna get an ad for this thing, or you're gonna go on Instagram and you see a bunch of people's photos from prom, and then also like of this horrible natural disaster that's happening somewhere, and then torture that's happening to animals over here. Like, we can get, and like, oh, also what's happening in this election, what's happening politically in this country. We can get so many variations of information that can vary tonally, that can vary in terms of its importance. Going on social media is a lot like going to Target or Costco. Like, you go for one thing, but then you see all this other shit that you didn't even know was gonna be there, and then suddenly you've spent $200. And you're like, wait, I was just trying to get a phone charger. What happened? So I think it's so important to take back your choice, to take back your agency. And when you don't have this thing that constantly fills the void, it forces you to do something that's generally going to be more productive, or at the very least enriching, because it's not all about being productive. I know people talk about deleting social media and how much more productive it makes you, but there's also just as much value, if not more, in doing something that aligns with your values that maybe isn't super productive, or maybe doesn't lead to making money in some way. But say you just really like painting, or you love reading, or you like learning about this, that, or the other thing. You know, whatever it is, all these things, like when you engage in a life that aligns with your values, you feel so much more fulfilled. You feel empowered. You have a stronger sense of self. And these are things that social media can strip us of. And I keep seeing this quote in regards to deleting social media, or like getting a flip phone instead of a smartphone, and it's like, you feel like a kid again. And I felt like this before I even saw people saying it, and I think it has to do with getting in touch with things you enjoy, which is often reflective of old interests that you might have abandoned when social media came into your life, or at least not given as much energy to, because you're constantly feeling depleted from going on social media. It can give you this sense of wonder and curiosity about new things, because once you're not spending like 6 hours a day on your phone, you have so much time to explore all the things that you thought you didn't have time for, when really you just weren't making time for them. And it feels like a weight is lifted, and you're able to tailor what content you take in. And a huge part, I think, of getting back that sense of wonder and curiosity that makes you feel like a child is there's so much less noise and information overload. I also have been thinking about this quote that's like, how you spend your days is how you spend your life. Do you want that to be watching TikToks about Trisha Paytas? Sit with it. I don't think you want that. But I'll also say, sometimes you do want that. Sometimes you do want to take in just dumb information that doesn't really lead to any greater purpose. If you're constantly like, oh, everything I do needs to be leading to self-improvement in some way, shape, or form, you're gonna burn out and you're gonna be like, okay, what happened to like having fun? But I do think it's hard to have I do think it's hard to have moderation with something that is so addictive. I don't wanna downplay a real addiction to like alcohol or drugs or something, but if we're thinking about social media as an addiction, like if you're an alcoholic, so many of us are addicted to social media. If you're a former alcoholic, you can't be like, oh, I'll just have a little glass of wine. Like you can't, there are certain things you can't do in moderation when your relationship with it has such a storied history of being dependent on it. Like it's not something you can casually engage with. And now the effects of being addicted to social media are a lot smaller than being addicted to a substance of some kind. But I do think it's important to think about it that way. And if you're craving some kind of like meaningless content that doesn't really help you in some way, you can get that like on YouTube. Like I have been watching, okay, I have been watching so many videos about the ocean and about dinosaurs. I was obsessed with dinosaurs when I was a little kid, and I have been watching like speed comparisons. I've been watching like like artificially generated like fights between dinosaurs. Like I don't know why. It's not necessarily making me a smarter or better person, but it's engaging with something that I'm interested in. And I think being on YouTube and taking in more long form content is a lot less addictive, in my opinion, and speaking for me, than like an Instagram reel. Our collective attention span, I think especially speaking for Gen Z, has gotten so short. Like I know so many people who are like, I can't watch a movie without pausing it all the time, or without also going on my phone and playing Temple Run and watching Family Guy and watching a slime video in the upper right corner. Like we have so much stimulation constantly that we've adapted to it. And now when we don't have that constant like itch that we're scratching, sometimes it's like a lot harder to focus. But getting back that focus is so important. You do not want to live a life with the attention span of a goldfish. I promise you that, okay? And then something I wanted to talk about is the fear of losing touch with everybody when you delete social media and suddenly not knowing what's going on anywhere. Listen, people have had close friendships, romantic connections, family relationships for centuries and centuries and centuries before Instagram existed. It is possible. I think we overestimate how much we're gonna feel like FOMO and how much we're gonna feel out of touch with everyone in our lives when we delete Instagram or whatever. But I promise you, you do not need it to have a very wonderfully socially engaging, fulfilling social life. Like so many people have never had social media in their lives, and they're doing just fine. I think we have just become so used to having it that we feel like it's gonna be this huge loss when we don't have it, when really, I think you'll find if you delete it, it's a net positive. And I do think that getting rid of social media forces you to live by your values, and you break away from just the content of it all. And I realized I don't care about celebrity culture at all. I don't care what an influencer is doing even a little bit. And I've honestly felt so disgusted with influencer culture for a long time, and the overconsumption of it all, like these huge PR packages that are like all plastic and paper and filled with all these like individually wrapped things. Like it's all so bad for the environment, and just like the level of overconsumption. Okay, this is getting into a different topic, so I'm gonna stop talking about it. But anyway, I care about real life, and I think when you're on the internet and all, oh my god, I can't talk. I think when you're on the internet a lot, it forces you to kind of engage with content, or at least be aware of what's going on in circles that if you take a step back, you realize, oh, I actually don't give a shit at all. I actually don't need to know what's happening in this person's life at all. And maybe it's a celebrity, or maybe it's someone that you had a class with once, or maybe it's someone that you used to date. You don't need to know what they're doing right now. If social media didn't exist, you wouldn't even probably be thinking about them. But it forces you to constantly be aware of people who are in your life or who have been in your life in the past. If they're not serving you in some way, like you don't have a fulfilling, I don't mean serving like benefiting you, like giving you something that you didn't have access to before, but I mean if you don't have a fulfilling connection with someone outside of social media, the connection is probably not that genuine. Sorry, just gonna say it. So here is my advice, okay? Do an experiment. Try it out. At first, it might be hard to not have social media. Like, I know the first few times I did this, I would be like, God, what am I supposed to do now? Like, I just want to go on my phone. I just want to, like, whatever. And it gets so much easier with time. Like, now when I've deleted it, I'm like, oh, thank God. It just feels like a huge weight has been lifted. But at first, it might be difficult, okay? But it's so freeing and so worth it. And once you start filling the space that you used to fill with social media with things that actually bring you joy and contribute to a values-based, authentic life, I really think that you're not going to want to go back. And whether you do go back or not, it's good to have the data and come face to face with how social media and the internet affects us. And so, you know, even if I end up going back to social media, which I very well might, because I work in the film and TV and acting world, and that's how you find a lot of opportunities. That's how you see, like, oh, this set needs a first assistant director, this set needs this, or I'm looking for someone to play this part, like whatever it is, that can be really helpful. And honestly, sometimes social media is just fun. But I also think it's really important to have periods of your life where you slow down and, oh, let me not do that, where you slow down and are just a person for a bit. Anyway, okay, that's all I have to say about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching it. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are.